Hi, so this is my week 9 video, I believe, for the Add1 Mandarin Challenge. And this week, or last week rather, we were asked to focus on pronunciation. And this is why I'm doing this video in English, because I usually do them in Mandarin. But I'm going to talk about I'm going to use some technical vocabulary that words that I didn't know existed in English until a couple of years ago. So my Mandarin is not that advanced. I'm not that interested in learning this technical vocabulary just yet. So I'm going to do it in English instead. And hopefully this could also be useful for some of you guys if you're learning Mandarin as well. So to improve my pronunciation, I've been studying the International Phonetic Alphabet in Mandarin. And the International Phonetic Alphabet is an alphabet where every symbol corresponds to a mouth position. So each symbol, once you've learned the corresponding mouth position, each symbol shows you exactly how a word is pronounced. So you can read a word and you can see how it's pronounced. And so I've been learning the symbols and the mouth positions in Mandarin this week. And here are some of the craziest ones. We've got, for example, you can see at the top, words that are spelt with the C are pronounced. So we get this TS, which is a bit like the end of an English word, for example, cats. And we've got the little H is like for aspiration as well. So that means that you get this puff of air. So you get tss. So for example, this word will be pronounced like tss. And then you get the same symbol, but without the little H, so without the aspiration. So z, for example, in a word like zao, which means early. There is also, let's have a look, this symbol, which is really cool, totally different to English. It's like a sh, but it's retroflex. And what that means is that your tongue curls back a little bit. So it's like saying sh, but you curl the tongue back, so you get something like shi, 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 which in Chinese means to be. So like 我是, I am. Then we get a similar sound, the same more or less, but we get this, you can see this T in front of it. So that means we get like a ch. So it's very similar to the ch, like chair in English. But it's retroflex, so that means that your tongue is just curling back a little bit. So you get ch, and you'll also see there's a little H, which means that you get this puff of air at the end as well. So ch, for example, in to eat, 吃饭. Very similar sound here below, but without the little puff of air. So that sounds something more like 知, 知. Then here we get this other sound which is similar to English but a little bit different, which is, here you can see the writing, it says alveolar, I can't even pronounce it, alveolo-palatal. The alveolar is the part of your mouth just behind your teeth, so you get this like little ridge. That's the alveolar, it's the alveolar ridge in fact. And then if you keep going back, you get the palate, the hard palate. And so this means that it's pronounced somewhere in between the two. So you push your tongue a little bit back. It's a bit like an S, but it's further back. So you get something like sh, 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 and you can hear the frequency is higher as well. So you get something like xi, as in 喜欢, which means I like. Xi, xi, just like an S, but with the tongue further back. Then we get the same, but with a t at the beginning. So this is going to be very similar to our t sound here, but it's further back. So we get, as with the t, we get the little H, so we get the puff of air at the end as well. So we get something like qi, qi. And then here we get it without the puff of air, so we get ji, ji. You can see these sounds correspond to the spelling in pinyin as well. So when you get this ch, you get something like qi, qi, and then when you get the J sound, you get like ji, ji, which is the same but without the puff of air. So I'm not Mandarin, so I may not be pronouncing these perfectly, but this is what I've been learning this week. And then we get this X, the phonetic alphabet is an X symbol, and it's a velar fricative. So the velum is like the little thing that hangs down at the back of your throat. So it's right at the back. No, it's not, sorry, that's the uvula. So the velar is, if you take your tongue and roll it all across the top of your mouth, and then you should get to a bit very far back where it feels quite soft. And that's called the soft palate, or it's also called the velum. So that's why it's a velar fricative. So that, and fricative means that the tongue vibrates there. So to get this sound, you put the back of your tongue against that soft palate and it vibrates, so you get something like. So for example in hen, which in Chinese means very. And then we get this r, which is totally different in Chinese, so it's quite fun. It's retroflex again, which means that the tongue is curling back, so you get this like r. So it's similar to the English R, but the tongue's rolling back. And I think I actually often hear this. It's not marked like this in the International Phonetic Alphabet, but I often hear this as a fricative as well. So it sounds like there's a little bit of vibration there as well. So you get like for example, in ro, which means meat. So there's some of the coolest differences. And I got this from using the Fluent Forever channel. So Gabe Weiner's made some really, really useful videos on Mandarin Chinese pronunciation and teaching you how to pronounce the phonetic alphabet, and so also how to pronounce Chinese words. So if you're interested in looking at that more, you can go and have a look at that. And it's very useful to know all of this. So, to have this knowledge about Chinese phonetics, but if you don't put it into practice, then it's not all that useful. So one thing I'm going to do this week is I'm going to practice looking at the phonetic alphabet and writing words in the phonetic alphabet and then trying to pronounce them. And it helps. I've got this book, A Nice Lady in Shanghai. It's a very nice and simple book with stories, and also with, let's have a look. So we've got the symbols and the pinyin at the top. And most importantly, I've got a CD with the lady reading it nice and slowly and clearly, which is going to help me write them down in the phonetic alphabet, practice pronouncing them, and then compare my pronunciation to her pronunciation. So that's it. That's what I'm doing to improve my pronunciation in Mandarin at the moment. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please subscribe to the Joy of Languages YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, 再见.